Hello there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. We do have some breaking news in the MLB. Luis Arraez of the Minnesota Twins is getting traded to the Miami Marlins for a right-handed starting pitcher, Pablo Lopez. Now, this is a big deal in the baseball world for a couple of reasons. The Miami Marlins have been looking for some key hitters for quite some time now. They've tried it via free agency, Adam Duvall, Jorge Soler. Those guys necessarily did not work out in terms of what they brought to the table. Now they are getting a bona fide, bat to ball guy. I mean, Luis Arraez gets on base and he gets a ton of hits. Now, case in point with that, he was a Silver Slugger last year. He was the batting champion of the AL, and ultimately took that away from Aaron Judge. But Luis Arraez is a very talented player. He's a guy that can hit to gaps. He puts the ball in play exactly where he wants it to go. And his fielding has come quite a ways from when he first came up in the MLB. And you can play him a couple of different places. We've seen him at first last year. We've seen him at second. He was an all-star last season. And the Miami Marlins in this scenario are getting a really good player. On the flip side, the Minnesota Twins have been seeking out starting pitching for quite some time. Now they net themselves a quality starting pitcher in Pablo Lopez. Ended up having a 3.75 ERA last year. He was absolutely off to an awesome start at the beginning of last season in 2022, but it did slow down. He did have a couple of rough outings, a little after the All-Star break when they deemed not to turn him loose and trade him. There was a lot of speculation initially at the deadline about the Minnesota Twins acquiring Pablo Lopez when they were making their push. Tyler Mahle is who they ended up going with. And then moving forward, that's kind of the direction they wanted to go. They gave up quite a few quality prospects in that, including Encarnacion, one of their best power bats in the entire system. But now they go ahead and net themselves a really good starting pitcher in Pablo Lopez. A lot of people deemed him as one of the best pitchers in the first half of last season. He ended up crumbling a little bit, one of the best changeups in the entire game. So Pablo Lopez going to the Minnesota Twins is something that is pretty notable. With the Twins trying to contend in the AL Central, something they've been lacking significantly is guys that can go quite a few innings and provide quality starts. That has been an issue for many, many years for them. However, they're starting to put together a formidable rotation. Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray, throw Pablo Lopez into the mix. Kenta Maeda should be back in the mix this season. So a couple of different arms that the Twins can throw at you. Tyler Mahle will likely round out that rotation for them. And overall, Minnesota Twins, this was a hefty price to pay, however, for a guy like Pablo Lopez, who, you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of him on a start-to-start basis, especially the last part of the season. But the first start of the season, he was in the Cy Young conversation for the first couple of months. But the thing is, the season doesn't end after a couple of months. You have to finish strong. You have to continue to string together quality outings. And he was not necessarily able to do that down the stretch. And now these are two franchises that are almost trending in opposite directions. The Miami Marlins are starting to surge a little bit, and the Twins, they're having some issues here. They're trying to put together a contender. They do have Carlos Correa back, primed to make another postseason run potentially. But if this trade does not work out, that's going to be tough. So the Twins capitalize on the fantastic season that Luis Arraez had and end up getting a really good quality starting pitcher in Pablo Lopez, who has had some struggles, like I'd previously mentioned. But I think what he brings to the table is a guy that can consistently provide quality outings in terms of, what he can do over the course of the season, comparatively speaking. Now we look at the Twins that the Twins have thrown out a lot of bad starting pitchers over the last two seasons, more specifically, but now they're starting to try to shore up that rotation. Pablo Lopez is a fun pitcher. He's a guy that you can get excited about. His changeup is fantastic to watch. The guy's changeup is incredible, probably top 5 in the entire major leagues in terms of what his changeup is as a starting pitcher. So he's going to Minnesota. Now there are other players involved. So if this were a 1-for-1 swap, I'd honestly think this is pretty fair. Kind of curious to see who gives up more in this. Maybe Miami has to give up a little bit extra. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to play out. Still awaiting the confirmation on those extra players. However, the main premise of the deal is done. Arraez going to the Miami Marlins. Let's talk about fit here. Does Arraez fit into what they're trying to do? Absolutely. They moved on from Miguel Rojas. Now they go ahead and bring in Arraez. who can, you can put him a lot of different places now. And Jazz Chisholm likely going to be taking over, potentially at that shortstop spot. They got Gene Segura in the mix as well. There's going to be a lot of different lineups that they can kind of work out because they have some versatile infielders that can play. Now you have Arraez, you have Gene Segura, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun, honestly, with Jazz Chisholm heading that group as well. Miami should be pretty good next year. I'm not going to lie. I think this team is primed to make a little bit of a run, considering they still have good starting pitching. They found a gem last year in Braxton Garrett as well, in terms of they weren't expecting him to come on as of late, which he did. And they have a lot of arms that they can kind of lean on, Max Meyer being one of them, coming back from Tommy John, drew out his elbow. This team is dangerous. The Twins had a multitude of bats that they, were having some issues trying to figure out when can they get some playing time. And Arraez, unfortunately, was the odd man out in that grouping. They felt they had to get a quality starting pitcher, and Miami needs some hitting desperately. They could not hit at all last year. They had an all-time bad month last year in terms of batting average. I think it was one of the worst in MLB history. That might have been in the month of July. That team, that the Marlins can't hit at all, but they're doing the right things, putting themselves in a position to be, possibly in contention next season in that NL East, which is going to be very tough. Twins are also deeming this as a win now move, trying to get a good starting pitcher into that rotation that very likely will slot in as the number 2 for this team. So overall, this deal is done. Just waiting for the other players. I think that should be, something noteworthy as well. I'm curious to see who ends up giving more in this one. Likely going to have to be the Marlins, but we will see with the next coming minutes here in terms of what that compensation ends up looking like. Thanks again for stopping by. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. Also, leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the content. We are posting more and more MLB content as it does come out. So appreciate you coming by, and we will catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.